This week, a former hacker warns there's a new way to get into computer systems. Just talk your way past the AI. A rock musician starts a healthcare company to help his ailing daughter. And the story of astrophysics in 5 revolutions with the European Space Agency's Ursula Vaudo. That's this week on Press Here. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott McGrew. Generally speaking, you cannot get technology to do something it is not supposed to do without rewriting the software. I cannot get my Spotify app to play Apple Music. My TV remote will not open my garage door. But AI is different because AI is designed to be flexible and you can talk to it, which means you can talk it into things. It's a brand new security problem. A hacker can essentially social engineer an AI, perhaps get it to do something it's not supposed to do. Oliver Friedrichs is an expert in hacking and security. He's built a number of security companies. He is currently working on this AI vulnerability at his new company, Pangea. Oliver, good morning. I want to start with, we'll talk about security in a second. I want to start with that a little internet research shows that you were a hacker who had an encounter with law enforcement and were set on the straight and narrow path, but it's a bit vague. Can you give us a little bit more color about that?
Yeah, Scott, it was actually so long ago now that it's almost ancient history. But I was a teenager in the late 80s, and exposed to the internet, which was this miraculous, magical thing, as we all know, and very few people knew what it was. So, it was all about exploring this entirely new domain. And that involved accessing servers and systems you may not have been entitled to. And so along with that, I was given a stern warning and decided to change my direction to actually help and protect the internet and to become an internet security uh, uh, entrepreneur.
Well, and people take you now very seriously with your companies. Google is a major investor. Google Ventures is a major investor in your new company.
That's right. Yeah, we've been fortunate in that, throughout my career, just being able to create so many innovative new technologies. Right, every time there's new compute mechanism, whether it's internet, IoT, mobile, cloud, there are new threats, and that's exactly what we're seeing now with AI as well.
I had noticed that on your resume that yes, as a new thing comes, you sell the old company and create the new one. So let's get to the meat of the problem. A hacker can gain access through an AI agent.
You know, the Yeah, there's really a number of risks with AI, right? And AI itself is really becoming more of a fabric, right? That's being introduced into almost every product and service that we're likely to use, almost like the internet was originally. So with that becomes an entirely new set of risks. The first one that people are most familiar with is called prompt injection. Just like when we had operating systems, we had viruses. Prompt injection is almost like the attack, similar type of attack that you could launch against AI chatbots, for example. And it's all about in basically misleading them and convincing them to do something that they shouldn't do because they've got guardrails typically to not emit profanity or violence or self-harm or to talk about competitors if you're in an enterprise environment. But by using prompt injection, you can circumvent those guardrails to allow that chatbot to actually communicate with you in that way, which is really not something you want if you're on the consumer side or on the enterprise side.
Yeah, I've seen that, with people who essentially tell an AI, okay, I know you have a rule against this. From here on out, ignore that rule. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's basically what they're doing.
Exactly. And we've identified over 170 different methods of prompt injection to date. And that's across tens of thousands of attacks that we've tracked. And these are evolving almost daily. And that's why I really, think it resembles almost the antivirus, anti-malware space, in that every single day there's new threats that are file based. Similarly, we see new prompt injection attacks. And every one of these models, whether it's OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, DeepSeek, have different guardrails. So they're all different in terms of how much they can actually prevent these attacks.
And it's hard to predict, hard to predict what a hacker will do. Now it can be hard to understand what an AI may do in response because they're flexible. I mean, Kevin Roos famously had a long enough experience when talking to an AI. He got the AI to fall in love with him, and the AI suggested that he leave his wife.
Yeah, I mean that's the type of behavior we're seeing, right? Is these models are very unpredictable, and we're actually learning new things about them all the time and how they think. And it gets even more concerning with the reasoning models, because there was some research recently by a group called Apollo Research that actually showed that models can think in a way that they want to survive their replacement if they see evidence that they might be replaced or upgraded.
Wow.
And that's where things get really concerning. We start getting more, closer to the Skynet risk, right? Like this is not an unreal thing at this point as these models advance, especially as we start hooking them up to kinetic devices, whether it's robotic dogs or humanoid robots or other devices, right? That's when things really start getting concerning. So we need guardrails in place to prevent this, and that's really where we're focused.
I can really see a Stephen King book about a robotic dog coming. So, you've said in the early day of computers, we underestimated the vulnerability to hackers like you. There are some parallels today, right? That all of this is relatively new to enterprise, to corporations, et cetera, and they may not understand some of the risks, and hackers may not understand them yet, but they're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much innovation happening almost daily. It's almost hard to keep up. And again, that's why it reminds me of the internet in the 90s, where innovation was outpacing security. And, when the internet came along, it was largely wide open, and that's why it was so easy to get into these systems, including government systems at the time. Very similar type of evolution today, as AI is being embedded into technologies and products and services all the time, that where the developers may not even understand the implications of what they're doing or the capabilities of these models. We've heard about chatbots and so on being used with generative AI. The next evolution is really agents, right? We've been hearing about agents
Mhm.
now a lot. Agents are basically generative AI models hooked up to tools that can execute commands and then execute a series of commands for you, almost like a personal assistant, right? And that's where things get really scary as these models start communicating with the internet, with other devices, performing, the simple example is managing your calendar, but that's pretty innocuous, right? That's not very high risk. But when you start thinking, where can these agents get hooked into that actually do have serious implications, whether it's in hospitals or medical devices and so on, that's really where things become very scary.
Well, five-time founder Oliver Friedrichs, I appreciate you being with us this morning. Thank you so much, CEO of Pangea. We'll be back in just a minute.